What we're going to do in this video is to provide an introduction to the main sociological theories. First of all, we need to be sure we know what a theory is. A theory of anything is a tentative framework for explaining a phenomenon. The research that came up with the idea of the asshole effect, which I referred to in the first week of the course, started with a theory about wealth and behavior behind the wheel. The theory was tentative until it was confirmed by empirical research. In sociology, as in any social science, there is no single theory that is the right one. The choice of a theory depends on the research interests of the sociologist and what they are hoping to uncover. As you'll see over the next few minutes, each theory has strengths and weaknesses. Here's what they all have in common. First and fundamentally, they seek to explain collective behavior in a social context. Remember the example from week 1 about the collective profile of many terrorists. Second, they are attempts to explain the dynamic between what we call structure, in other words, how society shapes you, and agency, how your own actions have an impact on your social context. Now that we know what a theory is in the context of sociology, let's start to get familiar with the 4 main theories. They are functionalism, conflict theory, symbolic interactionism, and feminism. First, functionalism. Overall, functionalists see modern society as a complex organism, or machine, with different components, the legal system, for instance, or the media, playing their roles. In this view, the behavior of individuals is shaped by social structures, in other words, set ways of doing things. What follows from that is that what keeps the organism working as it should is that there is broad agreement, what we call a social consensus. Summing up, we can say that functionalism offers a macro view of society, sort of the theoretical equivalent of a satellite photo. The focus is very much on social order, or what functionalists sometimes call equilibrium. Here we can see how the different components of society contribute to social order. An important strength of functionalism is to look into the function of specific elements in a society. For instance, what is the function of the family in a particular society, or of religion? You might be surprised to see crime on this chart too, but functionalists have convincing arguments for why a society needs crime to remind law-abiding citizens to behave. Functionalists have a lot less to say about the role of individuals, or what agency individuals exercise. Now we look at conflict theory. As you can see from its name, conflict theory's vision of society is very different than that presented by functionalists. The focus is on the inequalities between those who have more, wealth, income, opportunities, and those who have less. The main similarity between conflict theory and functionalism is that they both focus on the macro level of society as a whole. The key difference, which is substantial, is the view that society is characterized by conflict rather than by equilibrium. Overall, then, conflict theory takes a macro view of human struggle. This photo is a concrete illustration of the inequalities that conflict theorists focus on. Sao Paulo, Brazil, is one of the most unequal cities on Earth, And this image is a graphic demonstration of that. On the left, we see a sprawling and disorderly ghetto, favela in Portuguese. On the right, and safely walled off, is a wealthy enclave with tennis courts, pools, and lavish landscaping. Now we look at symbolic interactionism. The focus here is on how we come to believe what we believe. Also, on how our beliefs guide our behavior. At the core of this theory is social interaction, because it is only through social interaction that we feel life is meaningful and directed. Here's a very famous quotation from a sociologist. Quote, "Situations we define as real are real in their consequences," end quote. For instance, if you have bought into a conspiracy theory that a coronavirus vaccine will really be a cover for implanting all of us with microchips, the result will probably be that you'll start to see evidence of your newfound beliefs everywhere you look, especially on social media. That's also what psychologists call confirmation bias. We are predisposed to perceive things that confirm what we already believe. Summing up, symbolic interactionism is very different from functionalism or conflict theory because the focus is micro rather than macro. Last but certainly not least, we come to feminism. There are in fact many different schools of feminism, but they all have the same critical focus on gender-based inequality or patriarchy. Even though feminist sociologists have been making their voices known since the 1800s, feminism really came of age in the 1960s in an era of protest and changing relations between men and women. At the very epicenter of the feminist focus on gender-based inequality is the contention that these inequalities are based on and maintained by social structures rather than biological differences. Some feminist sociologists take a macro approach, largely due to the influence of conflict theory. Others look at the micro scale of gender inequality following the tradition of symbolic interactionism. Don't get upset with yourself if your head is spinning as you try to keep these theories straight. We will be coming back to them many times during the course as we develop our knowledge of sociology.